Welcome to the Lifestyle Builders Podcast, Show 13. In our last episode, we answered your questions live in our special Q&A episode. Today, we're chatting on a topic I know all the parents out there need: how to work from home with kids. Welcome to the Lifestyle Builders Podcast, where we bring you real-life strategies on starting and growing a business and finding financial freedom without sacrificing the life you have with your loved ones. We are your hosts, Tom and Ariana Sylvester, and we are married, we're parents, and we're serial entrepreneurs. This podcast is for those who want more out of life. We'll show you how to take the vision you have and create the business that will help you achieve it. Join us as we share practical steps, real-life stories, and help you become a lifestyle builder.
That really is a question, isn't it?
It is a big question. It is one so many of us struggle with, and there's all of the parental guilt that's floating around out there that you're dealing with, and just so many things are so much more complex when you add the word kids to it.
Truer words have never been spoken. I remember our neighbor said, we had our daughter, and our daughter was the easiest baby.
She was such an easy
ever.
baby.
And she's like, 1 is like none, 2 is like 20.
We were like,
and I'm like,
no, that can't be true.
Our kids are just they're so easy. And she was sleeping through the night. And then we had our son.
And then we had number 2.
Yeah.
And her quote came true.
But you know what? Even though it's crazy and hectic and more complicated, wouldn't trade it for the world.
No, God no.
And I mean, I say it every day. What was that? The show Kids Say the Darndest Things.
Yes, love that show.
I swear that's our life.
Yeah, I feel like every parent out there needs a GoPro just recording 24/7 in their house so that they can keep all of those Kids Say the Darndest Things on record.
Seriously, I mean, the stuff we see, the stuff they say, the stuff we say that we never thought we would say.
Yep. Yeah, it's like those parent tweets that come out and the things you never thought you'd say, and they're the most random yet hilarious things.
Oh yeah.
Or phone calls with parents, and you got you got squirrel mode where they'll be talking to you, and all of a sudden, don't play on that.
Yeah.
Don't put that in your mouth.
Well, and you know what? There's a lot of positives too. We're actually gonna have our daughter on the show in the future.
Yes, I'm excited.
So we're gonna talk to her, and we're gonna ask her, questions around, get her perspective on things, right? Because a lot of kids don't have parents who are entrepreneurs. So how does she view things? What questions does she have? What does she think we do? But what's interesting is I already see her modeling a lot of the stuff that we do as entrepreneurs and business owners. Mm-hmm. I mean,
remember when she was really little? And we had our Kanban board, our big, huge goal wall board. It was painter's tape, and we had Post-it notes everywhere, and we would stand there and talk about things. And occasionally she would be down there with us when we were talking about them. And don't you know, I want some paper. And she would sit there and make her own little Post-it notes board and scribble on them.
Yeah. And I mean, and we see that coming up through time and time again. I mean, we've got a wall in our hallway now that is her scoreboard.
Well, not just hers, because you know
she had to help.
Her brother has. She had to help her brother too.
Yep. So she made I can't even tell you how many of these sheets of paper. It started off with her thumb sucking challenge.
Yep.
So her goal was to stop sucking her thumb. So she made a scoreboard and put stickers on it every day she did that.
She's now on day 32.
Yeah, and she's tracking every day.
Still going.
First thing she does is update that board every morning. She got her brother into it with sleeping and then potty training.
Also potty training.
And now so Kanban was actually basically put sticky notes or reminders on the things you got to do. So now she's got notes around the house of what she's got to do.
She's obsessed with making signs.
Yes.
And she knows how to write enough that she'll say, how do I spell this? Or she'll even just figure it out herself.
Yep.
So we go around the house, and we've got signs that say, so-and-so feeds Delilah. That's our dog.
Yep.
So-and-so feeds Theo. That's the cat. And then you'll go into the bathroom, and it's potty training chart. And it's there's signs everywhere.
Well, I was gonna say, and not only are they signs for her and her brother, they were
going.
She
left us signs when she went to.
They were going to
overnight.
your parents. She left us signs of things that we had to do.
Mommy and Daddy's to-do list.
Yeah, things we had to do while she was gone.
Oh, she's nuts.
But I mean, they're picking up, and like if you ever don't think your kids are watching, they are.
Yes.
And that's on like the negative stuff and the stuff you got to watch out for, as well as all the positive things. So like it's been awesome to see what they've done so far, and looking forward to seeing what else they pick up in the future.
Yeah. So obviously, we could talk about our kids for a very long time, and funny stories and crazy stories. But let's get into the topic at hand. How do you work from home with kids? Now, I obviously had this struggle before you because I started working from home when we had her, and I was working on the 2 offline businesses.
Correct.
And I remember some of my struggles were trying to squeeze everything in to like the nap times, because otherwise when she started to get old enough to be like active and playing and wanting me, then it was okay, well, she wants me to sit with her, she wants me to feed her, she wants me to do this. So when do I get the work parts in, and when do I spend the time with her? So it was kind of like ping-ponging back and forth and trying to find the best times to do the work. I also had to bring her with me to work. When I used to go to our liquor store once a week every week.
That was so funny.
I used to bring her with me. So I'd bring like the carrier, and I'd be carrying her around. When she got old enough to sit up, we would just put like a blanket on the floor and surround her with toys. And she would just sit there and play, and people would come in and like wave at her and say hello, and she would just look
Definition
around.
of a family business, huh?
And one of our employees absolutely loves her. She calls her Miss Mary. And she's been around since Elena was like 8 months old, and we opened the store. So she's grown up with her. She's come to all of her birthday parties, everything.
Yeah, well, so what's funny is, I mean, you have no idea what being a parent's going to be until you are one. It doesn't matter how much you prep or how many books you read or how many people you talk to. But when you combine that with also being an entrepreneur, I mean, even if you're in a job and it's a side business, or if you're full-time, like, that's a lot to manage. And I remember we actually did a podcast episode on how our business has changed, not once, but twice, each time we had a kid. Kids. And, one of the biggest things I think for people is you have so much more time than you realize. And especially when you start adding on like business and kids, it seems like you have less, but what it does is it forces you to get really clear and really focused.
Kids are the ultimate productivity trainers.
That's tweetable.
They train you to get as much done as humanly possible in those little windows of time that you have when they're not like following you around. Mom, mommy, mama.
Yeah. I'm gonna say, was it Elena? She legit did. Was it Ty?
No, Ty did that.
Okay, I was gonna say
you showed Elena the video and she thought it was hilarious. Thanks for introducing our child to Family
to
Guy.
Stewie.
But yes, he did that to me. Legitimately followed me around, calling mama.
Yeah, it was good.
No, it was not.
But you know what? So like I remember back, and obviously I was still working a job when we had our daughter, and then you ended up leaving your job and staying home to help with the businesses. And I think we both had very different experiences there, and we had faced a lot of the same questions that most people face. Like, are the kids going to stay home? Are we going to put them in daycare? Yep. Are we going to get a nanny? Do we have family members that are maybe going to help out? And like for us, none of our parents were retired yet.
Nope, still aren't.
So that option was kind of off the table for us. And I know early on that neither of us really wanted to put them in daycare.
Well, no, our original goal was for me to be home with the baby.
Yeah.
That was something that we both had talked about and said, hey, wouldn't it be awesome if one of us could be home and really bond with our first child and be there for all the important moments. And that was something that we valued, that we saw as really important. But as time went on, it wasn't really practical for us. We got to the point where she was 2, and it started to be harder to get everything done that I was supposed to be doing while I was home with her. I mean, 2-year-olds are active. They're running all over the place. They're following you around. They want your attention all the time. And when you're trying to run not 1, but 2 businesses from home at that point, it's impossible to get anything done. So I was getting to the point where I couldn't get all my tasks done for the week. I was feeling overwhelmed. I was like, oh my God, I just need some more time where she's not like in my ear and climbing on me,
Yep.
So at that point, we found a family friend who was retired, and she's like, well, I'd love to come and play with her and hang out at the house while you get more stuff done. And luckily for us, our office is in the basement and we have a kitty gate across the top of the stairs. So that gave me the opportunity for, she came over, she would watch movies with her, they would color together, they would play games, she would follow her around and run around the house. And I was downstairs getting the work I needed to done. So even if it was only for, 4 hours a week or 8 hours a week if she came for 2 days, for me, that was huge, getting that time to be super focused on the business.
Yeah.
Now, that couldn't go forever.
Well, I was going to say, but before you get to that, I remember a couple, I think, key things that helped during that phase. The first one was, as you said, we actually built our home office. So we set up our basement so that we both had
a dedicated
space.
Yep.
Right. And then I remember the second thing we did was we started to get a lot better with planning. And that was when we really introduced like our 1 week sprints or our 1 week plans. Mm-hmm. Because I remember you at that point, you're like, I have all these things to do. I get to the end of the day, I feel like I got nothing done.
Yep.
And the one thing I had you do was I said, put a list of all the stuff you got to do out. And when you get it done, just start moving it over to done. And I remember what that did for you was to help you see that, sure, maybe you didn't get everything done, but you were doing a lot.
I was doing a lot.
You didn't realize it until you actually put it down and started seeing that.
Was one of the keys there was I was only looking at the business and, I didn't get enough done in the business. But it's adding all the life stuff in to it as well. So when you're home with a 2-year-old, like you've got laundry you've got to do, you've got to feed the child, you've got to do things.
small details.
Have experiences, like take them out some places, get out of the house, go grocery shopping. So what I wasn't doing was looking at all of those other things I was getting done on top of getting the business stuff done while I worked from home.
Well, and I mean, that's a big reason of why we focus on like work-life integration. And that's why we say, look at the whole picture, right? Because I mean, to be honest, the reason we're building our businesses was to be able to have time like that. Yeah. So we don't want to like criticize and like not enjoy our businesses because we feel like, family time's taken away. Like that's not it at all. Like we got to keep focused on why are we doing this and making sure that we design things to support that.
Yeah. And our goals changed. And as we said, our view of what we thought our life was going to look like also changed. So for me, that was seeing that I was okay with putting her into a program to get her socialized and to learn some different things and to meet some different people, because one of the issues that I saw was her staying home with me for the first 2 years of her life. It was great, but it also had the downfall of she didn't ever want to go anywhere without me or do anything without me. So it became the struggle of, okay, I don't ever get time for just me because she always wants to be with me. She's used to having me in her life.
Yep.
How's that going to happen? Like, how am I ever going to do anything else when she just wants to be with me? And she wasn't talking. She was only saying, I think, like 5 words. Well, she knew everything because you could point, you could talk, and
you could tell she got it.
She would follow your directions to the T of what you told her to do. But she just decided not to talk because she didn't need to. She could get across her message without having to tell you. She could point and walk around. Well, when we sent her to daycare, it was 2 days a week we started out with, and it was at a local area daycare that also has a curriculum that they follow for early education.
Yep.
So it was more like a preschool prep, but also daycare. So they were starting to get the kids into routines and learning and education before they were even ready for preschool. So she started there 2 days a week, and I think within 3 months, she had a full vocabulary.
I was going to say,
it was like a little chatterbox.
I couldn't believe the turnaround of just how much more socialization she had, how much she was communicating. And at that point, I was actually like a traveling consultant. Mm-hmm. So I was leaving like 4 days a week. And even when I'd leave on Monday and I'd come back on Thursday, I'd be like,
how did she learn all that stuff?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And like every parent, every couple has to figure out what the right choice is for them.
Yep.
And I know we initially had some guilt because we had this thing in our mind that I think most people do of like,
you should home with your kids.
I'm gonna build this business so that I can have freedom. But what most people don't realize is that just because you maybe leave a job and are working in your business doesn't mean suddenly like you can have kids around all the time. Like you've got to work in your business. And the thing that you saw was that part of why you weren't productive was because you were trying to split time
I was trying to
between
be like
a
the
kid
ultimate good
and
parent
yeah.
and also the ultimate good business owner.
And here's the thing, when you're splitting your focus, everything takes longer. You're not as productive. And I know the one big thing that happened once we put her in daycare was the fact that business time was business time, and then
Parent
family
time
time
was
was
parent
family
time.
time.
Yep.
And I know that you were happier, you were less stressed, and you were more productive
Yep.
because you could focus on getting all the work stuff done and then not feel guilty of having to like try to do it later when she was home.
Yeah, and so obviously this comes down to you, your family, what your life vision is and what your goals are. So I know there's a lot of people out there that have plans from an early age of having kids that they want to homeschool their kids. So obviously your life journey is going to look a little bit different from ours because we knew at an early age that we were not planning on homeschooling. So for us, putting her in daycare 2 days a week was actually starting to prepare her for what we eventually knew was going to be 5 days a week of her going to school
Yep.
full time. So I wanted to start that transition of holy crap, she's known her whole life is being home with mommy every day.
Yeah.
To I'm going to start to go somewhere else 2 days a week, and mommy's not going to be there until she comes to pick me up later. And then she bumped up to 3 days a week. And then I think it was when she went to preschool, we put her in full time.
Yep.
So she went 5 days a week. And that was also right around the time we had our son.
Yep.
Which helped a lot to have her in school 5 days a week. But then I had other issues, which we'll talk about. But ultimately, I'm sure we'll talk about it in another show. Ultimately, what we ended up doing was sending both kids to daycare and preschool full time.
Yep. And the transition there was that we actually had a nanny come in, kind of like we did the first time, to watch our son. I think
3 days a week.
3
days a week.
3 days, and they were like half days, right? Not full days.
It wasn't full days, but it was almost a full day. It was
Yep.
like
So
6 or 7 hours.
So we did that, and then eventually we realized that one, our daughter was getting so much out of this program, like legit. I can't believe how much that she
Let's talk
got
about
and
the
how
bigger
much she
issue.
grew.
Mama couldn't be home with baby number
And
2.
the second thing was baby number 2, even being in the house, like once he knew you were downstairs, he would just scream and all of that.
He was, let's just say, he was the polar opposite of his sister.
Oh, absolutely.
He was not an easy baby. And I had changed myself. I was dealing with hormones after giving birth to a second child. Nothing was the same as the first time around, which I'm sure most parents out there know that just happens that way. And I wasn't happy. I was miserable. I'm pretty sure I went through some postpartum depression that I never got diagnosed for. I lost myself completely. So for us, putting him in daycare full time was the answer.
Oh,
was the
absolutely.
only answer
It made a huge difference
to make a solution out of that problem.
Well, you know what, and I'm so glad that you brought that up because these are the things that most people don't talk about. Like being an entrepreneur is difficult, but like being a parent is also difficult.
Yes.
And there's these things we go through. And I remember at that time, that was when we really started getting serious about doing like our weekly reviews.
Mm-hmm.
And our daughter, like I think a couple months in, was like sleeping through the night.
Yeah.
And our son didn't sleep through the night
at 8 weeks.
until like a year and a half in.
Yep.
And I mean, that was like, I was still traveling for part of that, like right after he was born. And it was just crazy. Like neither of us were getting sleep.
Yep.
We're both working a lot with our businesses. You were home 4 days with them. I mean, there was some daycare and stuff in there, but I mean, we had a lot going on.
Yeah.
And these are the things that entrepreneurs often don't talk about.
Yep.
And a lot of the entrepreneurs that people follow, like nothing against them, but they're single.
Yep.
Or they maybe don't have kids. And it is very different when you do have kids and you're trying to figure all that stuff out.
Well, and let's talk about it too. The only reason we were able to do that is because you still had your job.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to afford daycare full time for 2 kids.
Yeah,
I mean, it's crazy expensive.
Yeah, we were paying like $24,000 a year.
But if we hadn't been able to do that, there's no way we could have run our businesses because I could not function with him home like in any capacity. It turned on the mom brain and I couldn't turn it off. And I had a really hard time focusing on any of the business work. And still to this day, I mean, we lost 2 days this week because he was home sick with us, and it's impossible to work. He's 2.5 now.
Oh yeah,
And it's still tough to have that focus to be able to do the stuff you need to do. So yeah, I think it's looking at your situation, looking at what you need and what your goals are for your family, and saying, okay, how can we make this work? Maybe it's not full-time daycare. Maybe they're not home with you all the time. Maybe it's a mix of both. Maybe you do like the 2 days a week they go to a program, and then 3 days a week they're home with you.
Yep.
But it's figuring out what's going to work for you so that you can actually put the time and focus into your business that it needs, because it's really tough to do that. And I know a few in our free group and even in our lifestyle builders that are homeschoolers full time, and they have to run their businesses. And I just can't even comprehend. Like, I feel like that's going to make my brain explode trying to think about how they even do all of that. So
seriously.
kudos to all of you homeschooling parents who are also running your business.
Yeah, I know. Well, like our strategy that we tell people is we're like, well, we got to have a 1-to-1 ratio.
1-to-1 ratio.
The kids,
1 kid per parent.
Yeah, the kids can't outnumber the adults. Otherwise, we're gonna be in trouble. So kudos to all the parents out there that have
Multiple
more.
children.
Yeah, I was gonna say that is hats off to you.
All right, so let's talk about some of the things you can do if you do have your kids home with you. Because, we talked about it. Daycare is expensive, so maybe you can't afford to send your kids to daycare. Or maybe you don't want to send your kids to daycare. Both of those are options.
Yep.
Some of the things you can do if you are working from home with your kids are setting boundaries and giving them routines.
Yeah, well, and not just them, but you as well.
You yourself as well.
That's like, so we'll probably do a whole episode in the future on the benefits of like keeping your job while making all this stuff work. But like one of the things that we see all the time when people leave jobs, and like I remember it even happened to you, and then even when I left, we still had to kind of redo it. A lot of people think like, I left my job, I got freedom,
I get to
right?
do whatever I want.
So I do whatever I want. Like, that's actually like the furthest from the truth. You're probably going to work harder and longer as an entrepreneur. It's, especially if you have kids, it's going to be crazier, and you're going to need more of a routine to make sure that you're focusing on the right things, getting the right things done. But a lot of people just kind of throw all that stuff away.
Yep.
And they end up hurting themselves. And then even with kids, like one of the best things we did with them was to give them the routine.
Yep.
I remember people would come over and our daughter would at night.
There's another kid in our family who was older, and it was
he
bedtime.
came over for like a Friday night movie night. We're playing games in the theater, and it's bedtime. And our daughter went. She did her routine.
Brushed her teeth, got her pajamas on.
We read her story. She went to bed, and the other kid, who was a couple years older, he's like, "She just went to bed." We're like, "Yeah,
that's it. She doesn't get up. Or
she just stays in there by herself."
Stays in there.
Yeah. And I mean, I remember talking to other parents, and they're like, "Oh, wow, that's amazing. It didn't happen by accident. We put the routines in place, and then that helps us, that helps them." And I mean, that's been critical for
Same
everything.
thing with naps.
Yeah.
She was that way with naps too. Like, she took a nap on the dot every single day until she was like 4, until preschool ended and they didn't have nap time anymore.
Yep. And I mean, every kid's different, but there's a lot more control that I think we have around how things work than most people realize. A lot of people will just say, "Oh, my son, he's a boy, so of course he's going to be crazy." Yep. Well, some of that maybe to an extent, but I think we have a lot more influence as parents than a lot of us give ourselves credit for.
Especially if the earlier you set the routines up, the more chance you have of having them like set in and work longer with your kids. So, I mean, we started her bedtime routine when she was little.
We started reading to her like the first week. Like, I mean, not that she was comprehending any of that.
She didn't even want to sit in your lap that long. But.
No, but I mean, we would read the books, and then that also became a routine for us.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that was kind of our mental signal that, hey, we're putting them in bed, and then, we kind of have our time.
Yeah, so obviously, this is going to depend on the age of your kids, because a 2-year-old doesn't exactly understand boundaries, but they do understand routines, at least at a base level. So if you can start to talk to them, even though they're young, you still talk to them as you would another adult. You explain things and you say, "Hey, work time. While we're home, mommy or daddy has some work that I need to get done, and I'm going to set a timer. So when this timer goes off, that means work time's over and we can play." So you start to get your kids ready by, they know what a timer means. They know that a ding means something's happening.
Yep.
So if you show them the timer and it has the little thing that's going around and it's ticking away, you can start to get them used to, okay, when the timer's on, that's mommy's work time and I don't bother her. I know another friend of ours used like a color chart. And if the color was red, that meant stop. You don't bother mommy. If it's green, that means you can come in and you can ask questions.
So is it bad that I just started thinking of like Pavlov's dog with the timer?
Yes, but that is what it is. You're training your kids to understand when things happen around the house at certain times during the day.
Yeah.
So, they know what nap time means. So that means you can also teach them this is work time. And if your kids they have a tough time maybe playing on their own, I know sometimes they need somebody else to play with, or they're not used to playing by themselves. What you can do is give them their own project to work on, or their own thing, the special thing to be doing while the timer's on.
Yep.
So they start to get used to, I got to do these 4 puzzles. I got 4 puzzles I'm going to work on while mommy's doing work up at the table. Or, they're going to do a coloring book, or they've got to paint by number, or whatever that happens to be. If they're older, they've got their own work that they can be doing. You give them homework. You just start to set that stuff up as a routine early on. So as they grow and as you continue to work from home, they begin to understand what that concept means, and you can tell them why it's important. We talk to our daughter all the time about why it's important for us to be working at home. We don't have traditional jobs like other kids' parents. We do our work at home, but that still means we have to do it in order to put food on the table and to pay for the house that we have and to pay for all the fun toys that they want to get every time we go grocery shopping. So you start to get them used to those concepts, and it doesn't make it quite so hard to do your work from home.
Well, I was going to say, and I think one of the biggest things I've enjoyed is having those like adult conversations with our daughter and seeing what she's comprehending out of that. So like, I'm really excited to bring her on the show because, we've had a lot of conversations about like, they both make money by doing chores around the house. They actually have their chore chart over here. And, we started teaching them about like spending, like she's got her money and she could spend it at the store and different things.
She ran out of money one time.
Yeah, she ran out of money, but all of those like life lessons that we're able to start teaching them early on. And then even just hearing her, like some of the things she says, like, one of the things that really impacted me was I always wanted to be home when she went to school the first day. And like, I was able to do that. Like, that was amazing. And then I remember a couple months later, I actually got to go to her school like in the middle of the day. And I was there, other parents were there, and there were a couple kids that like were upset because they were starting to do like their Christmas routine and some of the parents weren't there. And I just remember thinking back to like, it was years of tough work. It was times of being away, but like that then allowed me to be able to be there. And, I'll just tell people that all the time you're putting in, like, remember your why and why you're doing it. And it is totally going to be worth it to be able to do those things that you want for your kids.
Yeah. All right. Now that you got everyone all mopey and emotional, what about the unknown? Sick days and not everyone's gonna have snow days, but here in New York State we have snow days.
Kids don't get sick. What are you talking about?
Oh gosh, I remember, was it last year we were posting? I'm always posting like so and so's homesick, so and so's got this, and someone was like, your family is always sick.
Seriously.
And I was like, do you not know what it's like to have children?
Well, and you know what? Like, not that this should have been a surprise, but I think it caught us off guard early on.
Yep.
Like, there was one year.
I think it was the timing of it all.
Yeah.
Like, I knew we were going to get sick because you have 2 different kids and they're exposed to different germs in different classrooms, and everybody's bringing home different things they're exposed to because they've been out in the world. But I think it was the timing of it all where we all got hit at the same time every year.
Well, I was going to say, and what we started to see was basically like you get to around like Thanksgiving time, and then because you're around people.
Yep.
And then you go through like Christmas and New Year's.
And it's starting to get cold and the germs are starting to go around.
Exactly. So it was like from, Thanksgiving to like February. 1 or 2 of 4. Us or 4 were sick at any point in time. And I remember that really threw us off the first year because we planned our work schedules the same as we did the rest of the time. And it was tough to get everything done. Then what we did was we learned and we got smart. We said, you know what? End of the year, we're probably not going to have as much time. So let's adjust our goals and some of our plans accordingly. And then when that does happen, really focusing on, okay, what do we need to do now and what can shift?
Yep.
And I know that was like a critical one. And when we started meeting, saying, okay, I'm sick today, one kid's sick today. Is there anything that you've got to do? Can I help, you do some of that stuff? And then what can we shift?
Yep.
And that just, I know, made it so much easier to not feel guilty like we were behind. We just shifted it to what made sense and we took care of what we needed to.
Well, and I let's talk about guilt. I used to struggle hardcore with the guilt around being sick because I couldn't function as a parent. I never got as much done in the business as I was supposed to. And I felt bad for taking time off, like to be sick. And I just remembered, how dare you be sick? I remembered like I'd be sitting on the couch like, oh, this is what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be resting when you're sick because you can't get better if you don't get rest. But I would be sitting there internally feeling all the guilt. And then I would prolong my sickness.
I was going to say,
because I wasn't
it was like the worst thing you could do.
I wasn't relaxing. I was tense. I was freaked out that I wasn't going to get everything done. And then it's like you're trying to deal with the kids, and kids don't understand sometimes when adults don't function like they should because they're sick.
Yep.
They don't feel good. They still think you can play and drive them places and do all of the normal things. And so I would get distress from the kids and like feel guilt because I couldn't play with the kids and couldn't take care of the kids. And it was a mess.
Well, I remember I had to legit just kick you out. Like,
You did.
babe, you're not doing any work today. Go chill. Go relax.
But you knew that about me because it had happened multiple times to the point where I was like stressing myself out.
Yeah.
So for you figured out like, I just have to tell her to just leave. Like, don't try to do work. Just sit there. And I had to, in exchange, tell myself, everything's going to be okay.
Yep.
I can't stress out about all that stuff because whether or not I like it, I have no control over what's happening right now.
Yep.
I am sick. I need to take care of myself so that I can get back to taking care of the kids and the business.
Well, it's just like being on the airplane when they say, if you're traveling with kids, in the event of an emergency, you put your air mask on first, then you put theirs on.
Yeah.
And, that goes for sickness, but it also goes for health. Like, it's a wedding thing.
Sickness and in health? Huh. Interesting where you took that.
It's amazing how that comes around. But anyways, but like even like working out, like I know there's been times where like we've fallen off like eating healthy and doing that physical activity. And I know that's been a big thing. Like whenever I get like sluggish or not motivated, I find that like if I start eating better, if I start actually going to bed on time, if I start doing a little bit of physical activity, it makes a big difference. So like what I see all of that coming back to is like, we've got to take care of ourselves first so that we can then give to our kids. We can then give to our businesses. We can then give to our
I feel
customers.
like you went off on a side tangent. This was kids having a sick day, not us, by the way. So that is coming back to it. What do you do when you work from home and you're counting on your kids being at daycare or at school, and then all of a sudden they're not? They're home with you. You get that dreaded call from the school of so-and-so has thrown up or so-and-so has a fever of 103, and you're like, oh, I have 4 interviews today. How am I going to do this?
Or we're getting them ready and they throw up on you.
Or that. Or projectile vomit all over you right before you're getting ready to take them to daycare.
Yeah.
Oy.
That never happens.
Never. Not at all. Or
But
Monday.
But you know what? I mean, so a couple things that I've learned. It's going to happen. Don't fight it.
Once again, can't control it.
Just work through it.
Yep.
The majority of the time, the world's not going to end. If you got to reschedule a call, people are going to understand. If they don't, I'd question if they're the people you want to be working with anyways.
Yeah, exactly.
As you know, when you work a job, you get 5 or 10 days a year to be sick. But as an entrepreneur, a lot of times we feel like,
we don't take them at all.
We can't be sick. It's
Yeah.
like, no, like when you're sick, clear off your schedule, take care of critical stuff, right? That's the thing we always check on. But outside of that, it's like, let yourself be sick, let yourself heal, and that stuff's going to be there. The world isn't going to end.
Yep. And I think that's something you forget, like the whole reason most of us are doing this is to have more time with our kids and to be able to be
Absolutely.
home with them.
Gotta
when
be
stuff like this
recentered.
happens. So when you do have an unexpected, my kid's going to be home with me today, instead of immediately going to, oh my gosh, all of these things that I was supposed to do, I'm not going to get done, can you reframe it and say, well, this was unplanned, but can I make the most of this by doing those important, urgent tasks and then spending the rest of the time with my sick child and snuggling and getting them what they need so that they feel better and sitting and watching a movie with them if that's what they want and not stressing about the business stuff.
And how cool is that opportunity?
It's very cool. And let's be honest, when your kid's homesick, most of the time they're going to take a nap. So you know you're going to have a chunk of the day where they're probably going to be sleeping because that's what they need to do anyways.
Yep.
You just sit there with them while they're sleeping and get those top couple things done that you absolutely have to do, and then just let it go and just take the rest of the day as it comes. Now, weather-related days, for those of you that live in snow country or I don't know, any other kind of natural disaster country where you may not have school, those are a little tougher because, of course, kids love snow days. They're like, woohoo, day off from school, let's do all the fun things. And you're like, no.
Isn't it crazy how different snow days are when you're an adult versus a kid?
Yes, so different. So we just had one, actually, this past week. And I remember our older child, our daughter's school was closed. All the schools were closed, but his daycare, our son's daycare, was still open, and I was going back and forth like, do I try to shovel the driveway out? Do I try to get him to daycare so that I can at least get a somewhat productive day?
That sounds like a lot of effort.
With the older child, and I just said, nope. I looked outside. The snow, the snowplow hadn't come down our street yet. Our driveway was full of snow, and I said, nope. So I made him get a snow day as well, and we just spent the day here at home. They watched movies. We went out and played in the snow. But I did take some time, and I said, hey, you guys, you got to be playing. I'm going to get some work done. And you just do what you can.
That's what it is.
It is what it is.
You just do what you can.
Exactly. All right. I forgot a key task here. Asking for help.
Yeah, that's
I don't know how I forgot that. So obviously this can go to when you're homesick, when your kids are homesick and you've got stuff that you absolutely have to do that can't be rescheduled. Anything like this where it's unplanned and it's last minute, ask for help. Family, friends of friends, neighbors, whoever you can ask to help you out in any way, do it. I know sometimes it's awkward. I know a lot of us don't like to ask for help because we think we're super parents and we can do it all. Don't put more stress on yourself. Just ask for help. So I was actually home by myself because Tom was traveling.
Yeah, it was at the conference.
And our neighbor came and snowblowed the end of our driveway. So thankfully that helped me out because I didn't have to do the whole driveway. I just had to shovel the middle section, and he got the worst, which was the end. But don't be afraid to ask people like, hey, I needed to go grocery shopping, but I don't want to drag the sick kid with me. Can you come and just sit with them for a little while? Or, hey, can I drop them off because I've got an appointment I've got to go to, or something. There are people who love you and support you, and most of them are going to be willing to help you out, even if it's just for a short time.
Well, you know what? And I'm the type of person that it's tough for me to ask for help.
You are.
So what I do is I try to pay it forward with people. Like, I always try to help anyone, anytime I can, and it makes me feel a little less guilty when I have to ask for help. It's still a struggle, but at least I know if we've been able to help other people that they're just paying us back, you know? So
yeah. All right. Homework for today.
Homework for today.
Is there any?
Well, I'll start.
Okay.
My homework is to, talk to your significant other about what are your plans for having, either if you have kids now or if you're planning on having kids in the future, what are your plans for how you're going to work and how you're going to do life? Because a big thing for us was that we always had those conversations. And especially when things were getting tough, like after we had the second child, our weekly meetings where we talked about what went well and what didn't allowed us to make shifts. So I remember we had, like you were breastfeeding and our son just wasn't sleeping and I had to keep waking you up.
Yep.
We ended up making the decision to switch him to part formula so that I could help out. Right. So the key thing that I would give you guys as homework now is, depending on where you're at, have the conversation. Like, how do you view daycare? How do you view a nanny? Do you plan on keeping them home? And at least start opening that up so that you guys are aligned on it. And then as you go forward with that, you can test that out, make adjustments, all of that. Absolutely.
Yeah, I actually do have some homework for
Beautiful.
this episode. It just came to me. I want you to make an emergency kid kit.
There you go.
So you know your kids, you know what they enjoy doing, you know some of the things that would excite them or be new and different. Go out and do a little bit of research. I mean, there's tons of YouTube channels and blogs online with all these like different activities for kids to do. So I want you to make yourself an emergency kit. So the next time your kid has a snow day or is homesick from school, you've prepared this kit of, okay, I've got movies on the wish list, so I can be like, oh, you want to sit and watch a new movie, you don't feel good, let's snuggle.
Yeah.
Or if they're home on a snow day and you've got stuff you need to get done, what are some projects you've got in the emergency kit that you can pull out and be like, guys, let's make this cool fun craft, or here's a new game that I've been saving for a day like this. Get yourself and put together a little emergency kit so that maybe even if the day is unplanned, you can kind of bring it back in and get it under control a little bit.
It's a really good idea. I like that homework.
Now I got to make my own emergency kit. Usually I'm on the fly, like, ooh, let's see what things we have you guys can do.
I was gonna say, well, I remember you had a marble game you made one time. It was like the holes from
It was toilet paper rolls.
toilet paper rolls,
Yep.
yeah, or paper towel rolls.
And we taped them
like
to
you
the
taped
wall.
them to the wall, and
Yep.
it was like the best thing ever. It kept her
was. It was
occupied
pretty
for a long time.
It was pretty cool. This was back when I had time to Pinterest. Now I'm like so behind on my Pinteresting that I don't have all of that backed up. But it is something, if I did some quick research, I would easily have an emergency kit of fun things.
Absolutely. All right, book for this week is actually one of the classics. It's called Getting Things Done: The Art of
I don't know if you
Stress-Free
can see it when you
Productivity.
hold it. Yeah, hold it that way.
Huh?
That way. You were like tilting it. It was awkwardly resizing. Oh my lord. Just hold the
So
thing
it's
normal.
Getting Things Done by David Allen. And I read this book a long time ago, and it's actually the foundation of a lot of our productivity stuff. And what this does is it just really gives you some tips and tactics and ways to look at things to actually organize all of your to-do list and to start thinking about how can you actually get more done, because a lot of us get overwhelmed. And one of the biggest things that he says here is to like get all the things out of your head and into some sort of system or process so you can manage it.
Brain dump.
Yeah, I mean, you love the brain dump. And once you do that, then it's easier to manage. But like when you have, your job and the business and the kids and everything else going on, it's so easy to just get overwhelmed. So this is a really good book. It's going to give you a lot of tactics and a lot of tips to really just help manage it all.
And you can find the link to that book at our show notes page, which is tomandariana.com/13. All right, you guys, it's been another great episode with Tom and Ariana, your hosts and lifestyle builders.
And as always, it is your life, your business, your way. We'll see you next time.
Are you frustrated by a lack of momentum in your business? Do you want real-time guidance and support from seasoned entrepreneurs who really care about your results? If you're nodding your head or awkwardly shouting yes in public somewhere, then we invite you to join Lifestyle Builders, a mentorship program designed to meet you where you are and give you strategic and custom guidance so you can build the business you need for the life you crave. You can find out more at joinlifestylebuilders.com.
Your life, your business, your way. Join Family Entrepreneur Life. Join Family Entrepreneur